What is the tyranny of happiness?
Well, see, that's what partly why I moved to Los Angeles is because I would argue that LA is one of the most religious places in the world. If you define religion as the promise of wholeness and completeness, of a kind of transcendence, then when you go to LA, every corner there's somebody saying you can be whole and complete through psychedelic enlightenment, commodity satisfaction, sexual liberation. There's promises everywhere, doing yoga or whatever. And there's a real tyranny of certainty and satisfaction. There's a desire to be whole and complete. And the funny thing is, someone like the philosopher Slavoj Žižek makes a really interesting argument that today's superego is a superegoic enjoyment. And what that means is often we feel guilty, not because we didn't visit our mum. We feel guilty because we're not having enough sex. We're not hanging out enough. We're not going out enough. We're not having enough fun. We're looking at everybody else on social media and they're having all of this seemingly enjoyment, what they're called uncastrated, right? That means they've got the thing and we don't. And so we start feeling guilty and bad for not having enough pleasure in our existence. So a lot of my work is about saying that we need to be freed from the tyranny of happiness. Mm-hmm. We need to be freed from this frenetic pursuit of more and better and kind of realize that this thing's a fiction, just like the Liver King's a good example. Whenever you see all these, all these images of people online who are happy, most of the time they're not. Or they're happy for a little moment. Like I used to live in this apartment block where I would see on an almost weekly basis some people shooting Instagram live videos. They would come out, they would set up, they'd open a bottle of champagne or whatever that would be fake. They'd get out the glasses, they'd pretend to have fun, they'd do all of that, they'd do their few minutes, and then as soon as the camera was off, just look depressed and walk off. You know, it was pure fiction. But what that's doing is we're looking around and everyone looks like they're having fun except for us. Yeah. Everyone looks like they're having a great time. And it makes us more anxious, more depressed and more unhappy. So freedom from the tyranny of happiness, which is a lot of what my work is about, is allowing people to be free from that crazy pursuit.
It is really interesting. When you were talking about the couples that put up all the photos on Instagram, I remember something my granny used to say to me was happiness is an inside job, which I don't think was hers. I'm pretty sure she plagiarized that off somebody big. But posting loads of photos like that, looking for affirmation and looking for happiness is the opposite of an inside job. It's like you're trying to make it an outside job. It's like, oh, if I get enough eyeballs on this, or if I can convince the people around me that I'm happy, then maybe I will actually experience it myself.
Yes. Now, and this gets us into the heart of something really interesting about desire, human desire, because there's a sense in which I would argue that all happiness is interconnected in some way with other people. So they call this the incest taboo in anthropology, where the incest taboo is basically where in any culture you will find that there is a taboo, obviously against incest of some kind, whatever that is. But ultimately what it means at its most basic is you can't stay with your mother forever, right? Otherwise you become Irish, right? you have to break out of the family unit. And the reason why you find it everywhere is if you could stay at your mother's breast forever, that's kind of like a private happiness. You just be content, right? But you have to kind of be pushed out into the world and find your happiness somewhere else. So the philosopher Žižek tells this great story about this guy, and this guy is washed up on a desert island. And he's on the desert island and only one other person has been washed up with him. And it is Cameron Diaz. He's like, oh my goodness, Cameron Diaz is the only other person on this whole island. So he tries to flirt with her, tries to get her to sleep with him. But she's none of it, right? This guy, let's call him Seamus from Ireland. This guy's Seamus, no interest. So eventually, after about a year, Cameron Diaz realizes, listen, this is the only guy on the island, right? Maybe we should get together. So they have a romantic meal. They end up sleeping together. It's wonderful. Seamus is so happy. The next day he wakes up, big smile on his face, and he says to Cameron Diaz, listen, just do one thing for me. He says, put on my hat. And could you draw a little moustache on your face and put on these boots, right? And then meet me down at the beach. And she's like, what, is this some weird sex game or something? He's like, no, please, just do it for me. Just do it for me. So she does, and she goes down to the beach. She sees Seamus. Seamus runs up to her, puts his arms around her, says, oh, it's so great to see you. He says, you'll never guess who I just slept with, right? In other words, it's not enough to just sleep with Cameron Diaz. You have to tell someone, you know.
Yeah.
And in fact, the funny thing is about sex is a lot of guys, what's more important is telling their friends that they slept with somebody, not the sex itself. It's the telling. So there's something about desire that always involves other people. To some extent, but the unhealthy version of that is when, of course, we only get a substitute pleasure from the pleasure of people thinking we're having pleasure. And that's where it gets kind of messed up.